Got the firewall, front of the frame, underside of the cab, and a couple other things painted up. Turned out pretty slick. So look at the stock shock towers. These cleaned up really well. You can still see the original part number and forward casting. So both shock towers, the steering shaft support, both spindles, the knuckles, the steer box. I'm actually gonna put another coat of paint on this because it got kind of crusty during mock-up. U-bolt plates, high steer arm. These are the Northwest Fab disc brackets. I believe these are either black oxide or I can't remember what coating is on these. I think it's black oxide. Drag link, tie rod. Pretty much all the front axle parts painted and ready to assemble. Got all of the valve covers and the intake horn back from polish. These turned out really, really good. I think it's going to make the motor pop really well. Quick look at the hubs, cleaned up, painted them, pressed in new lug studs for the slip-on rotor conversion. They're a little bit longer stud, 9/16 18 I believe. The premium worn locking hubs with metal twist caps. The stock Fords had plastic caps and mine were cracked out. For anybody curious about the studs for the slip-on rotor conversion, these are the Dorman studs that I used. Part number 610347. 9/16 18 wheel stud. Got the wiring harness in the truck. It's a Rebel wire 9+3 harness. It's a 12 circuit. Pretty basic setup. This truck's not running anything fancy. Fuse block is made really well. You can see the wires are labeled every 6 inches. Currently just pulling wires through, getting ready to loom everything and get the layout. I'm held up on the motor right now and a couple other things, so the front end's just kind of hanging out right now. Here's a look at the new Venture 4500. I don't think I ever showed this underneath the truck. Obviously it's a 2-wheel drive trans because the transfer case is divorced on these Highboys. I got it off a local guy. He said he had gone through it, but we all know how that goes. Everything's rebuilt on Craigslist. But these are pretty stout transmissions, so there is a leak at the tail housing, so I gotta figure that out. But aside from that, as long as the guts look good, I'm probably just gonna rock it as is and do the upgraded input shaft with the South Bend clutch. I've had a couple trucks with these transmissions and they're pretty stout. Never had any issues with them. So the pair of battery trays I fabbed up, it's all 1/8 inch steel. I think the stock trays are 16 gauge. And there is a driver side auxiliary battery tray that you can get factory and a dent side, but they're really hard to find and pretty expensive because they're so rare. Here's a quick look, just some J hooks, simple tie down. I'm not going to run an Optima. I have Odyssey Series 65 AGMs, which will fill this tray out a lot more, and the tie down will fit a lot tighter. Got the Dana 60 painted up. I did a 1410 yoke. Cleaned the housing up pretty well. Coat of paint, nothing crazy. I did actually end up snapping the axle shaft ears, so I'm going to a set of chromollies as soon as I can get those in. Carrier bearings and pinion bearings are in really good shape, so I just kept the originals in. It looked like they really never had been engaged or ran on. Turned out pretty clean. I'm gonna end up prepping and cleaning the leaf springs, U-bolts, all that, and throw another coat of paint on once everything's torqued and completely set. I ended up snapping one of the stock axle shaft ears around the U-joint. This axle came from Massachusetts and the shafts are pretty corroded. Trying to find stock replacement shafts is pretty impossible for these 78-9 axles because the pumpkins kind of off-center more. I'm going to end up going to chromoly 35 spline outers too. So I need to find a set of 35 spline Warrens, sell my 30 splines, and get all that dialed in. Then I can get the entire front end back together, steering and brakes and all that. Alright, had a 2-month wait for axle shafts because we snapped the ear on the original, the OEM shafts. Ended up getting chromoly 4340 shafts with 35 spline outers. And when they showed up, there was actually a bad shaft in the bunch, so I had to wait until after the holidays, and then East Coast Gear Supply overnighted me another shaft. So they've always had really good customer service. I did my Toyota rear third member and clamshell through them, so shout out to East Coast Gear. New axle shaft dust shields, all new seals, lower kingpin bearings, races, lower kingpin caps, new high steer arm, studs, new bushings in the upper kingpin. Actually did the upper kingpins themselves, which are kind of a pain in the neck to do, but ended up getting them busted loose. Everything's brand new. It's a quick look with the spindle back on and Northwest Fab's disc brake conversion bracket. It's all machined out of one solid piece of steel. I ordered Torque Motorsports brackets, and there's a bunch of people that haven't received parts from them after paying for them, and I had to go through a PayPal dispute to get my money back from them. So I would definitely recommend going with Northwest Fab. It's actually a nicer bracket anyway. Alright, we got the hubs back on, new bearings, new races. Since we did the 35 spline outer stub shafts, we had to upgrade to 35 spline Warren locking hubs, but everything inside the hub's brand new, and or rebuilt I should say. Alright, steering and brakes are back on. As I said before, these are 2010 and newer Dodge 3500 rotors and calipers. Northwest Fab's conversion brackets. They make them for Ford, Chevy, and Dodge Dana 60s. All the rotors and calipers were sourced off Rock Auto. Not that expensive at all. And if I didn't mention it in the previous video, the hub has to get turned down about a 1/4 inch on the edge to accept the slip-on rotor. Steering is all 1.5 inch quarter wall, GM 1-ton tie rod ends. Got a little kick in the tie rod to clear the diff cover. I do think I'm gonna have to grind the aluminum fins down a little bit to clear. Look at the driver's side. Supposedly this setup with Hydro Boost, according to the manufacturer, can lock up a 40-inch tire if need be. Hopefully we don't ever have to lock them up, but the added stopping power should be quite nice over the 4-wheel drum that we had before. Alright, here's a look at the front end all back together. Everything's pretty much buttoned up for the most part. We're waiting on engine parts right now. Billet, valve spring, retainers, and keepers. I gotta order a clutch. I'm gonna run South Bend's 3250 dual disc with the upgraded main shaft, or input shaft. I plan on TIG welding a 4-inch to full 5-inch stainless exhaust for this, so I gotta order piping for that. Right now the main holdup is just engine parts. I'm trying to get the head off to the machine shop and get some work done. Decked, O-ringed, machined for top hat style valve seals. And I gotta get the rocker arm pedestals machined for the studs. Got ARP studs going in. But as of now, we're just waiting for parts.